Scott Estevez, Katie McLennan. In the annual election held on November 5th, 2024, the following individual was elected to serve on the Board of Education for a one-year term. Crystal Mark. Congratulations. We're now going to do the swearing in of new board members. If we come down to the front, we'll do you one at a time. If you bring down your, yes, your little, there's a little sheet. Yeah, there's one sheet there that you have to read.
This sheet?
Yep, that's it.
Oh, this one?
Now it says swearing in.
It's a big one.
You can sign it.
That one. Okay.
You do it all. You did everything.
Katie first.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm not the
Taking a
only one
picture of their butts
with
would
short
probably be
lips
wrong.
up there.
I, Katie McLennan, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the government established in the United States and this state under the authority of people, so help me God. I, Katie McLennan, do solemnly swear that I possess qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of the office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
I, Danielle Daly, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Danielle Daly, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
I, Crystal Mark, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Crystal Mark, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all of the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you, ladies. We will now do roll call. Mrs. Butler? Here. Mrs. Daly?
Here.
Mr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Here.
Dr. Marr?
Here.
Mrs. McLennan?
Here.
Ms. Nyquist?
Here.
Mrs. Case?
Here.
I also want to mention Mr. Estevez's paperwork has not come through yet, so he will be sworn in at a later date. Pat, welcome. We will now have nominations for the president. Katie?
Kim Case?
Second.
Third.
Are there any other nominations? Can I have a motion to close nominations?
Motion to close.
May I have a second on that?
Second.
That roll call. Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes.
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
Yes.
Mrs. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes. I do think you
Congratulations.
prove yourself, yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. Happy New Year. Moving to The next item, we are in the election of the board vice president. Can I have any nominations?
I nominate Ann Butler.
Second.
Any other nominations? Okay, motion to close the nominations?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Butler? Yes. Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes.
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
Yes.
Ms. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes. Congratulations. Okay, keeping it going. Communications. I just know we had one email. I don't know, Mr. Alexis, if you just want to report on it?
Sure. The board received an email asking about when the 2025-26 calendar would be approved. Mrs. Case and I each responded, and as you know, it's on the agenda. We pointed out that it was available on Friday afternoon on the website.
Thank you. Board committee and liaison reports. We'll start with Karen.
Okay, Finance Committee did not meet per se, but we, all the bills were checked and the transfers, et cetera, so everything is okay to be approved. Anything else that has to be reported will be done by Robin during her report. On December 11th, there was a meeting of the Ed Services Commission. I guess two things. I know we'll be approving it at the next meeting, which is this Wednesday. They have their new rates of service for the coming year, and the rates of increase go from mostly 0, 1.9, and 2, but there are one or two of the rates that go to 3 or 4%, unfortunately. Also, there was discussion about the consideration that certain buses that transport students, the smaller size buses, that the drivers do not need commercial driver's licenses. However, there have been no guidelines or even a skeletal potential contract to deal with vendors, et cetera. So in light of not having good guidance and to check, I guess, to protect themselves liability-wise, the ESC is only sticking with CDL drivers. Okay. We had a governance meeting, and what we did at that is we actually got together a list of the individuals and groups that are going to get a direct invite to the planning sessions, and George is going to continue to highlight the sessions and the times, et cetera, in the emails and the appropriate blasts that go out to the school community. Subsequently I sent a note, and I hope it got to all the previous committee chairs. Governance did review their responsibilities as posted on the website. There'll be a final review come the next meeting, but it really is important for all the committees to just look at them because, we found out, we saw one or two things that weren't relevant to us, and just to get them cleaned up. The role of the committee chair, you see, we did have a first reading. There were some comments. They were incorporated. Then there are some additional comments, so it's not on for a second reading this time. The new governance committee will be reviewing it, and then it'll be on for the next one. Two quick things. There's going to be a new self-evaluation tool this year, and it'll be available sometime in January. Charlene will let me know when, and the governance committee is actually going to look at it prior to release and use by the board, just so we get a feel for what it is. It's supposed to be simplified and easier to understand. Okay, now a question came up, and to get some guidance on terms of contact with administrators, and I'll just use, basically, our guidance comes from George. Our first contact has been with George, and based on what he provides us in terms of guidance, we can move ahead, or an individual on the board or a committee chair can move ahead to speak with an administrator. For example, in particular, let's say developing an agenda for a committee meeting. It really is going to be put together by George and the appropriate administrator who's representative on the committee, and then sent out, and if anyone on the committee or the committee chair's comments, they should come back through George, et cetera. The two committees that will operate a little bit differently are policy and governance, because they're more directly related to the board operation itself. So the committee chair will work with George directly to develop the agenda. Again, getting feedback from the committee, once it's out. And to make things, I guess, well, to provide us with better tracking and better information, all minutes and agendas for committees should go out through George. That's it. And then this way Liz can keep a track of it, could be in our board folder, and we have a good record of everything. So that's all there is, folks. Then, I don't know when the next governance meeting will be.
I have a feeling you will be in the know soon. Okay. Any questions for Karen?
Yeah, where'd you get your hair done? Looks nice.
Does look great.
God, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's kind words. I really do. New year, new you. How red am I? Really, no, thank you very, very much. I got some very nice compliments from you guys. I appreciate it.
Okay, Danielle.
Okay, so as, for the Community Relations Committee, we decided to forego the December meeting. We're gonna reconvene in January, once we figure out who the chair is. And we'll be, touching base with George in regarding to the agenda items. And then as for the PTO liaison, looks like so January 16th, there will be a fundraiser at Panera Bread coming up. So please come out that day and help support them. Also on the 31st, January 31st, there's gonna be the talent show. There will also be merchandise there for sale, so that will help them out with fundraising. Then in the future, there will be the Harlem Wizards, so please get your tickets now because they always sell out. And then future, looking more forward, there will be another glow dance, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
And then the next meeting for the PTO, it looks like the executive board meeting will be at 6 p.m. at the Long Hill Township Public Library on January 22nd. And then there will be a social hour on January 29th at 6:15 at the Millington School. And then right afterward would be the general meeting at 7 p.m. at Millington. That's all.
Okay. Any questions for Danielle? No? Okay, great. Crystal?
Nothing to report this month.
Okay. Ann?
Nothing to report.
Alrighty. Tom?
Nothing to report this month.
Okay.
Yay, January. Nothing to
Just
report.
here. Okay. Katie?
Hi, nothing to report in regards to buildings and grounds. And for the Long Hill Ed Foundation, our winter force classes begin tomorrow at Gillette and Millington. And we have our upcoming meeting on January 20th. It's virtual, and it's at 8 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. My only question would be about transition reports for chairs. Did everybody submit those, Karen, or?
No, I apologize, I didn't bring that up, remind everybody. They're really important, because when a new chair comes onto the committee, at least they have something to work with, and they can really start working right away, versus trying to figure out what they should be doing. So it's very important. So if you could all make an effort to do that, and again, it can be brought in through, would you rather have it through the governance or through you, George, or what?
Just send it to George.
Yeah.
George, okay.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, because when I touched
That's
base
fine,
with
Liz can keep track
him
of
to
it all.
find out if I was gonna submit one, because I didn't know if I was gonna be a chair again for the same committee, and why would I submit a summary to myself? So
For
I just held-
posterity, number one, so that just because, and then, because you just never know what is going to happen. We don't know
Sure.
who's going to be the chairs. I promise you, once you start to fill it out, it's not as hard as you think it is. I think it sounds like more tedious than it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you put in a couple of those minutes and you kind of look at like what you did, it'll be easy to fill out the other things. And what Karen does, at least with governance, she shares it with everybody and says like, what do you guys think? So then you can have your other committee members weigh in and take a little bit of the burden off of you. But just try to take, I bet you it won't take you more than 25 minutes if you sat down to do it. So just do those, guys, and get those into George, because the next committees for 2025 could be meeting in the next like 2 to 3 weeks, right? So we just want to have those and just lock them up. Okay. Superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. First, congratulations to Danielle, Katie, Crystal, and Scott on their election to the board. I wish all of you the best and thank you for your service. But given that it's School Board Recognition Month, let me also thank all of you for serving as excellent role models for our students. Thank you for your continued service. As a follow-up to last week's heating issue at Millington School, PSE&G was able to repair the flow valve under the road last Thursday afternoon. The heat was restored, and we were able to resume school on Friday morning. The 2025-26 calendar is on the agenda. As a reminder, the calendar is substantially similar to this year's, but we moved one professional development day from October to August, so there are 3 days of PD before Labor Day. We also reduced the emergency closing days to 3 from 4, which allows us to keep schools closed on January 2nd and end the year the 3rd week of June. On the topic of calendars, our former student, 8th grade student at Central School, Aza Chang, will enjoy the honor of having her artwork included in the 2025 New Jersey Division of Fire Safety calendar. Congratulations to Aza and her art teachers, Mrs. Dunn and Mrs. Cohen. I'm pleased to report that later this month we will begin our after-school math tutoring program, and I thank our teachers for supporting our efforts. The approval of the teachers teaching those courses and tutoring in math after school is on the agenda also. Also on the agenda, a resolution authorizing the submission of a CUSAC equivalency waiver. Okay, CUSAC student performance calculations in the instruction and program domain are changing next school year. Essentially, the state is modifying the formula for measuring performance by weighing the science score less and the student ELA and math growth measures more. They are making this new formula available to the districts undergoing CUSAC this year, but an equivalency waiver needs to be board approved and submitted to the county by February 1st. The county superintendent drafted the waiver application and we revised it for our use. The equivalency waiver was discussed with the CUSAC committee and the association's leadership. The application was shared with the board and posted publicly with the agenda, which remains on the district website. We invite public comment this evening. To give a little bit more context, the state is not sharing our official performance scores with us until January 15th. We calculated our scores based on both formulas in the CUSAC manual and have determined that the new formula yields a slightly higher score, so we plan to submit the waiver. It would have been better, of course, if we had the official scores before being forced to make a decision, but I'm confident this step is in the best interest of the district. Let's see. Last, the Uniform State Memorandum of Agreement between education and law enforcement officials is on the agenda. This is the annual approval, and I have to say again that I'm so pleased with the assistance we received from the Long Hill Police. And that's it for me. I'll turn it over to Robin. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, Business Administrator's report. First thing I want to mention is that with flu season upon us, we've asked Buildings and Grounds and Mark and Dursky to go around with the electrostatic sprayer again, and they're doing all heavily touched surfaces. They're trying to do the surfaces 2 or 3 times a week to try to keep the flu at bay in our schools. You'll notice on resolution number 44 that we've added the uncommon thread as over $44,000. You approved the contract last month. This is because we needed a one-to-one aide full-time. We advertised, we're still advertising, and we were not able to find one. So the uncommon thread was able to supply an aide for us. So that has been added to the agenda. We also added Beata Home Health Care Services of Morris Plains as a providers of nursing staffing, because we're having trouble finding substitute nurses to go on trips and just to substitute for our nurse, and we do need a sub-nurse. So we've added them to the agenda so that if we can't find a substitute nurse on our list, we do have someplace else to get a nurse. Number 46 is one about the ROD grant. If you all remember, we went out to bid on the ROD grant. The bids came back. They were $270,000 over budget. So we're rejecting all the bids, and we are rebidding it. The bids will come in again on January 22nd, and we'll see where we go from there. So hopefully we'll get some good bids. And that's the business administrator's report. Yes.
I mean, just out there, like, what if that happens again? I mean, so we have to just keep going out?
No, we don't. that. So we'll do that another time. We are also at this point looking at our state contracted vendors, and that we're going to see if we can go from there if we don't get it. But bidding is really the way we have to try first.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So we're only gonna try twice?
We try twice.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Is that delaying the start, or?
Minorly. I mean, it just came back, so it's not so bad. We were disappointed, though. The architect was really stunned at how high they came in. So keep our fingers crossed. Any other questions? No?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comments from the public on agenda items? No? Okay. Okay, the next item is a resolution from the school boards, the recognition month. I think we should read it out loud because I'm sure, not everybody is looking at the agenda. So maybe we can just kind of go clause by clause. I'll just kind of help facilitate. Karen, can you start with the first whereas?
Sure. Whereas the New Jersey School Boards Association has declared January 2025 to be School Board Recognition Month, a time when all residents can acknowledge the contributions made by our local school board members. And
Danielle?
Whereas the Long Hill Township Board of Education is one of 581 local school boards in New Jersey which sets policies and oversees operations for public school districts. And
Whereas the Long Hill Township Board of Education embraces the goal of high-quality education for all New Jersey public school students, and
Whereas New Jersey's local school board helps determine the educational goals for approximately 1.4 million children in pre-kindergarten through 12th grade, and
Whereas New Jersey's 5,000 local school board members who receive no remuneration, thanks for that,
Sorry.
for their services, act as advocates for public school students as they work with administrators, teachers, and parents for the betterment of public education. And
Whereas school boards strive to provide the resources necessary to meet the needs of all students, including those with special needs. And
Whereas boards of education provide accountability to the public. They communicate the needs of the school district to the public, and they convey to school administrators the public's expectation for the schools. And
Back to you, Karen.
whereas New Jersey can take pride in its schools, which rank among the nation's best in key achievement indicators such as the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores and the preparation for college through advanced placement offerings and SAT assessments. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Long Hill Township Board of Education does hereby recognize the services of local school board members throughout New Jersey as we join communities statewide in observing January 2025 as School Board Recognition Month. And be it further resolved that the Long Hill Township Board of Education urges all New Jersey citizens to work with their local school boards of education and the public school staff to the advancement of our children's education.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adopt?
so moved.
second.
Any questions? Okay, roll call?
Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
yes.
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
yes,
Mrs. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes. Okay, next, resolutions for reorganization. It's going to be items number 2 through 29. Karen, will you move those in?
So moved.
Second.
Pick. Any questions?
Mrs.
Yep.
Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes.
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
yes,
Mrs. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes. Okay, next is the adoption of the New Jersey School Boards Association Board Member Code of Ethics. Item number 30, I think we should also read this into the record. I can start with just the resolve that the Long Hill Township Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, adopts and agrees to abide by the New Jersey School Boards Association Board Member Code of Ethics as set forth in NJSA 18A:12-24.1, the Code of Ethics. We'll start with Karen again.
I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures.
Danielle?
I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing.
I will confine my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them.
I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well-run.
I'll do one. I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action they may compromise the board.
I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends.
I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspiration of the community for its school.
I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer.
Karen?
I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties.
Danielle?
I will refer all complaints to the Chief Administrative Officer and will act on the complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution.
All right, motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
You could pick probably anybody.
I'll pick.
Okay. Roll call?
Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes.
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
Yes.
Ms. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes.
You'll find that there's a sign sheets for you on these in your packet. At the end, if we could just pass them all to me at the end of the meeting.
Okay. Okay, resolutions, under the regular order of business, minutes number 31. Danielle, will you move those in?
Minutes 31. So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes.
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
Yes.
Ms. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes. Financials, Crystal, we move in items number 32 through 47.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes.
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
Does this go to 41? I'm confused.
Yes, through 47.
Okay, I need to abstain from 41, please.
Wait a second. Okay.
Yes, everything.
Ms. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes. Okay, personnel, Ann, will you move in numbers 48 through 62?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions?
I'm sorry, who was first on that?
Oh, I moved it.
You moved. I second.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Any questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes.
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
Yes.
Ms. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes. Okay, Tom, will you move in curriculum number 63?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes.
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
Yes.
Ms. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes. All right, Jesse, will you move in policy number 64 and 65?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
On policy 5145.7, gender identity and expression. It comes complete with definitions, one of which is cisgender, which I personally find offensive. I was wondering if that could be stricken, or if that is by state code. And also it includes following organizations provide support to transgender individuals. That's all well and good, but I don't know that that is, if it's germane to a policy, and if that should not be in some other avenue for the people who need it.
Justin, do you have any comments on behalf of the policy committee?
We made look to Crystal for, we made no changes from previous years, and this is the exact same as was approved by
That
the
is-
board last year.
That's correct. And so there were no changes made. It's the same policy that we moved in prior, and it is mandated in per code.
So the,
We cannot strike cisgender.
Other questions?
can I just continue? And what about this additional information? That's also part of the policy?
What are you referring to, Tom? I'm sorry.
Right after
Yes, those
the
are all the.
cross references, and then there's this following information. It's just information. It has nothing to do with the policy itself. It's titles and topics and all kinds of things, and that's great, but I don't see that in any other policies for anybody else who needs any kind of help. I don't see anything for crippled children. I don't see for anything anywhere else for anybody who needs it. So I'm wondering why this is part of the policy. Why is it different than any other policy?
So, Tom, I don't have in front of me exactly what you're referring to, so I can't speak to that.
Sure, I do.
But if it is a resource list, then the resource list is provided by the New Jersey Department of Education.
But must it be included in the policy? It can be.
Yes,
provided.
it is. Yeah,
This
no,
policy is,
yes,
we
it's
took
it's
this from the model
boilerplate.
policy from
Yeah.
school boards.
It
So
doesn't mean we have to-
I wouldn't advise changing it in any way.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes,
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
excuse me, amended. Yes to all but the policy I just amended. I just mentioned 5145.7.
I'm sorry, give me the number again, 50?
5145.7.
Mrs. McLennan?
Yes.
Ms. Nyquist?
Yes.
And Mrs. Case?
Yes. Okay, Katie, will you move in other numbers 66 to 70?
So moved.
Second.
That was Crystal on the second. Any questions? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskopf?
Yes,
Dr. Marr?
Yes.
Mrs. McLennan?
Yes.
Ms. Nyquist?
Yes.
Mrs. Case?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Any items for discussion, any unfinished business?
I don't know whether it would be items for discussion, but I just, we passed the resolutions dealing with the code of ethics and the pledge, so I just encourage everybody to just review it. So we're gonna really try to work towards really doing everything on there. So, I mean, it's not easy, it's hard, but if we can really get it all together, it would be great. The other thing is, what's really important is as soon as the new chairs and the new committees can get together, as soon as you could decide on your yearly schedule, that would be of great benefit to everybody. So I just put that on your agenda, so to speak. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Any other unfinished business? New business? Okay.
And I apologize for not mentioning this sooner, but January was newly named Muslim American Awareness Month. It's a brand new statute. It's never been recognized before, so
What
I
is
just
it?
think,
Muslim Awareness Month.
Okay.
I think that's kind of, since it's brand new, as a board member, I'd like to just acknowledge it to the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other thoughts? I'll just tack on a little bit to what Karen said about the committees. So I'm going to send out a form. You guys probably remember it from last year. It's going to ask you like what your preferences are, what committees have you served on, would you like to be a chair, what are your preferred times of meeting. We kind of take those into consideration and we look at, I look at everybody's request. There's a lot of committees and not a lot of board members. So, hopefully just take it with you're really serving the community. So think about it that way. I know not everybody's going to get like their top choices. I do try to move people around a little bit so that there's different levels of exposure to all the different topics, but we also have certain expertise areas, and like I have to have people who have that knowledge and expertise in certain areas. So I will do my very best and know that, next year's always another year and we can kind of go from there. So I will send that out tonight and ask that you guys fill it out, maybe by, like, if you could do it by Wednesday, a pretty quick turnaround, just so we could keep the momentum going. Okay, any comments from the public? I'm going to read this. At this point, the Board of Education welcomes comments from any member of the public on any topic. Please note that as per Board Policy Number 1120, a total of 15 minutes is allocated for public comments at any single board meeting. In order to provide residents the opportunity to comment, individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each at any particular board meeting. The board may extend these time limits at its discretion. Any questions should be directed to the board president, and depending upon the nature and complexity of the question, it may or may not be answered during the meeting by the administration. If so, the response would occur after this public portion of the meeting has concluded. Everyone has the freedom to speak, but please be advised that anything said in public may have legal ramifications, and there is no protection regarding statements made by the public. Please state your name and address before you begin.
I'm Lauren Franklin. I'm president of the Long Hill Township Education Association. I've been a staff member here for 27 years. I was coming tonight because I wanted to talk about the adding of a preschool class that we're planning to do. I know it was talked about at the last meeting. Adding another preschool class is adding another class to Gillette School. So I came to ask tonight, what is the plan from the board going forward? We're adding another class. You have to think about Gillette School. It's about a 10-pound box that we already have 15 pounds in, and now we're putting 20 pounds in. Different perspective to think about. We basically have almost three grade levels there, which is about 40 students less than you have at Central School. Think about the size of those buildings. What is your plan for the art teacher and the counselor that already share a room, and the speech teacher that we already have flying around the building that doesn't have a place to go? So now we're just going to displace more people. So I'm just questioning, what is the plan? Is it trailers? Are we redoing the board office and rented a house? I've got a million ideas, okay, that if that is it, but I think the plan needs to be. I've been here 27 years, and when we got to this point before, there was a referendum put forth if we needed space. Maybe we need to restructure. But there are answers out there, but we need a plan rather than just shoving more pounds into the small box. So I'm hoping this board can come up with something, because 3 years ago there was a group that walked around and decided we couldn't add a class in 2021 to Gillette School. So now 3 years later, nothing's changed, but we can still add the class in a place where we couldn't fit it before. So I'm here to speak for the teachers that are being displaced out of rooms and have nowhere to go to teach, because we need to add another class. So is it a referendum? Are we going up on Gillette? You getting us a trailer? Senior center? Lots of ideas. Hopefully you have some for us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Anne, will you move us into executive session? Oh, do you have another? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you just state your name and address before you begin?
Sure. My name is Christina Malpione. I live in Sterling on Railroad Avenue. My questions are similar to Mrs. Franklin. So I was on that committee that met 3 years ago. My vested interest is that I have 3 very small young children in the district, my youngest being in first grade. So to echo what Mrs. Franklin said, our previous findings were just that. We toured all three schools in the district. We met with all the principals. We spoke with staff in all 3 buildings, and we were really trying to think outside of the box. I don't know where those minutes from that committee went, but I know that Mrs. Colon also sat on it with us, and she I feel like documented a lot of it, so maybe they exist somewhere. But in regards to that, there was limited space in all 3 schools. We looked at where the board's housed. We looked at restructuring the senior center. We looked at the cost of adding a classroom in both supplies, facilities such as bathrooms, sinks, the hand washing stations, which are, as you know, state mandated, and the structure and the staffing of both teacher and support staff, which is something the district already struggles with. The loss to the primary students, the first and second graders that are state mandated, and kindergarten, on the loss of a cart or music, moving from classroom to classroom, the lack of interaction. The goal of the board, if I'm not mistaken, is to increase attendance at school. And as we know, children learn so differently, and the loss of the ability to have the manipulatives and the items needed to be more successful as an artist or as a future pianist, or the exposure starts now. So, and as a former educator myself who specializes in early education, I think that we're seeing more and more time in a seat, right? We're given 30 minutes of outdoor recess. That doesn't include the children's commute time in and out, right? We're taking more and more and more. The iReady is starting younger. We're seeing more times on the screen. So I think, especially in that early childhood realm in Gillette School, to be taking things from the first graders and the kindergartners, such as art and music, and shoving them in classrooms with the children who need support services, and the speech teacher who doesn't have the ability to have a sight wall or her items needed, his or her items needed for the success of all the students that the district serves. I think that that's also important to mention. We looked at the grant. There's a grant through the state of New Jersey which allowed for basically renting space from centers that had empty space that would allow us to house in their local preschools, if you will, which have all the manipulatives in the space and the square footage necessary for this age group. And that was during that was coming out of the pandemic. This committee, which I believe Danielle, Mrs. Daly was on, and Katie, we worked together, and it was different coming out of the pandemic. People were still keeping their little ones home, so we worked with a lot of child care facilities in the area, and there was a lot more space. We're not seeing that trending anymore, of course, because people have returned to work and things. So I just wasn't sure before there was any formal decisions, and selfishly, in a few years, I will have a kindergartner and hopefully a potential pre-K 3-er. And I don't want my kindergartner to suffer for the sake of a spot from my pre-K 3-er. I'm going to be right there. And I don't want my daughter to not have the same experience my son is having at Gillette School currently due to trying to fit another class. Now, of course, I understand that children test in, the child study team, we have to provide services as they're needed at the early childhood level, and the legality of all of that. And thereby, we need general ed students as well, which is a term I hate. But we need the plan and the continuum. So I just was hoping that the board was open to the idea of possibly exploring another committee, which included parents from the community, to hear our concerns directly. Like I said, selfishly, I'll have a kindergartner in Gillette School and potentially a pre-K 3-er. And I'm a licensed teacher in need of a job. Wow, if we could all be on the same calendar, what a miracle that would be. But anyway, so those were the concerns, and I worked so hard on that committee, and I know we were heard so well, and I hope that before a definitive decision is made, we look at all angles for the best opportunities for all of our kids, which is really why you're all sitting in these chairs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Anne, will you move us into executive session?
The board will enter into a private executive session to discuss confidential student matters subject to attorney-client privilege. Action may be taken following the executive session.
Second? Motion? Second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Make sure you give Robin your